Um, Good morning. With the help of Hashem, we are learning Yerushalmi Shvis, Pede Gimel, Halacha Gimel, and Halacha Dalid. We're learning today Daf Chav Beis. We left off on Daf Chav Aleph Amid Beis, 4 lines before the bottom of the Amid, when the Gemara is referring back to the Mishnah, Rabban Shimon ben Gamliel Amid Beis Shemaina Soin. In other words, the Mishnah is speaking about the leniency in the scenarios in which one will be allowed to pen animals on Shavis, and as the Gemara established, that is only allowed when the intent is not for that area to become fertilized. The issue is marasayin, and the solution for the marasayin is that if you don't pen a large area, if you limit the area, as we learned in the Mishnah, it becomes evident that the purpose of penning the animals is because, I don't know, people have to share the animals. There's certain, you have to milk the animals. You need the animals to be together. That's why you have the animals penned. And there's absolutely no problem doing it on Shvius. With the details, you can only begin by enclosing an area of 2 Beisa. According to the Chachamim, you can then go to the neighboring area, to the adjacent area, by leaving 1 wall of the 4 walls up, only moving 3. And Rabban Shimon ben Gamliel says that you can be more lenient. You only have to leave 1 post. And thus, you can see a picture, not only can you ultimately double it, you can actually do it 4 times. You begin with 2 saw at a time, and you can have a total of 8 saw. That is what we left off with. We're going to begin today's shir by quoting another Tana, Rabban Shimon ben Elazar, that says what Rabban Shimon ben Gamliel says in our Mishnah. And then we're going to make us a bridge, and it's going to be fascinating. We're going to go now learn a lot of review of Hilchas Shabbos, Yom Tov, and Chol Hamoed. Now, penning animals, Shabbos, Yom Tov, and Chol Hamoed, not like we are learning over here, dafka not to fertilize. If you want for the area to be fertilized, and for that you're having that area penned through a goy. So we're going to touch upon Amira La'akum, and that's going to be a big topic. We know that Midrabanan, Amira La'akum is prohibited, whether it is for Shabbos not to become light in your eyes, whether it is Dabir Davar, whether it's a Da'asmachta of Kalmalasa Lo Yei Ase Bahem, or as one time Rashi writes, and so actually Paskins the Alter Rebbe, that yesh lichus la'akum l'chumra, when it comes to Shabbos, whatever the rationale behind it is, we're going to be touching upon what were to happen if a goy were to pen a area in a Jew's property on Shabbos or Yom Tov or Chol Hamoed. Now, just to clarify something, that fertilizing on Shabbos, Yom Tov, and even on Chol Hamoed is a tulda of either sowing or plowing. However, even though normally by Shabbos Yom Tov, when we use the word tulda, it implies an isur da'iraisa in our sugya, since even when the intent is to fertilize, when someone pens animals, they're not fertilizing that area with their hands. They're not doing it biyodayim, just to make it clear that the isur of fertilizing a field through penning an area and putting animals in there, Shabbos Yom Tov, is an isur derabanan, and yes, and it includes Chol Hamoed as well, because it doesn't fit the 5 reasons why one would be mated doing malacha on Chol Hamoed. So here we're going to speak about what happens if a goy did it post facto, whether you could pay them for the fertilizing of that area or whether you cannot pay them. This is going to be a fascinating connection, even though it's dafka not the way we are learning it here in Shvius. As we, again, to repeat, in Shvius, the penning was not l'shem fertilizing. What we will learn in the first Amma today will be when someone penned an area, a goy did it for me, for the area to be fertilized. We're going to learn about Schar Shabbos. We're going to learn about the concept of Havla'ah when it comes to Schar Shabbos, as we'll speak out when we learn the Sugya. And then we're going to have a little bit of an Eitzah Tova, what to do if someone is constipated. That will more or less be the conclusion of Halacha Gimel. And Halacha Dalit, that God willing we'll learn today, will continue to speak about Marasayin, but we're going to move on to another topic. and that is the following: removing rocks, stones, to prepare your field for planting is a tulda of plowing, and therefore it may not be done on Shvius. Removing stones from my field for any purpose other than preparing the land is going to be completely permitted. Like, for example, if I have a quarry and I'm removing rocks because I need to build, so I'm hewing out from the ground pieces of rock. Theoretically, there's absolutely no problem. But here again, the observer might think that I am removing rocks from my field to prepare the land for planting, for plowing and planting. Or if a person has a stone fence, as an example, and I am removing the fence. Well, if I'm removing the fence to clear out the area underneath it for plowing and planting, that will be usher to do on Shvius. If I am removing the fence because I want to use the rocks from which this fence is comprised of for some other building engagement that I'm involved in, then there would be no problem. But again, you have a maras ayin issue. So Bekitzer halacha daled will be touching upon me'inyan le'inyan, doing some work, which if the kavana is not to prepare the field, should be permitted. The problem is maras ayin, and the solutions of what needs to happen for it to be clear to the local observers that you're not doing it in order to prepare your land. That will be today's daf. And Chavra, without any further ado, daf chaf aleph amid base. Again, 4 lines from the bottom of the Amid, as we have in our Mishnah the leniency of Rabban Shimon ben Gamliel Omer, that not only can you ultimately pen an area that will total to base Shemaina Sa'in, true, only 2 saw at a time, and you can leave, and you have to leave one post of the original pen, of the original enclosure, not one wall, only one post, and you will therefore be allowed to do that times a total of times 4. And indeed, Tanis, as the Gemara we learned in a Braisa, don't get confused. This is Rab Shimon ben Elazar. This is another Tana. We're bringing it to show that Rabban Shimon ben Gamliel is not standing alone. He also says that Imratza Toikea Hayasid Ba'aretz, that if you want, as long as you leave one peg inserted in the ground, so you're not mamash moving a pen from one location to another. I don't like that picture. Go back to the other picture. We didn't explain that picture yesterday. The oisa arba saharin, and you'll be able ultimately to make 4 pens or 4 enclosures. That's the bottom one. You see, you leave the peg in the middle. But arba ruchaiseha shel shmoina sa'in. Okay, very good. Now, Tav Chav Beis. And here, like
Rabbi,
we spoke out in the introduction,
Rabbi,
it's very important. Unlike our Mishnah, our Braisa is speaking specifically about someone, which would be a goy, creating an enclosure and or only bringing animals into an already enclosed area, into a pen in a Jewish field. The reason why this is being done is in order for that area to be fertilized. Fertilizing a field, Shabbos, Yom Tov, and even on Chol HaMoed is asun midrabanan. It's either connected to plowing or it's connected to sowing, to planting. Why is it only midrabanan when normally in Shabbos a tool is asur doiraisa because it's not biyodayim, but you can't do it midrabanan? And we don't say amira la'akum is going to be allowed when it's a derabanan. We don't have that approach, as we all know. We don't say it's a double shvuz. Amir al-akum is a derabanan, and any isur derabanan you can tell a guy. We don't have that. We don't say that. Okay. Another detail about Amir al-akum, that it's not only that you're not allowed to ask him to do it for you. That's one part of the isur. But even if you didn't ask, even if you didn't hint, if something is being done for you. Let's go with one Rashi. There's 2 Rashis. The Rashi that says that yesh shlichus la'akum l'shabbos l'chumra. So then, even though I didn't ask you, just like you have a concept of zachan la'adam shaloi b'fanav, you can become my shliach even if I didn't ask you explicitly if what you are doing is for my benefit. If a guy does something for my benefit, then because of the rules of shlichus, it's as if I did it and I can't have benefit from it. Now, I know there are many, we're not learning now Masechta Shabbos. I just want to remind people that there is a difference between, let's say, direct benefit versus indirect benefit. I want to give you an example of what I mean. That's not negate to our sugya here. Direct benefit would mean, for just example of Vlad, if the lights are off and I want the lights to be turned on. So when the guy turns on the light, even forget about if I didn't tell him explicitly, even if I only hinted, even if I didn't hint, but he did it for me, I got a problem. If he did it for me, then I can't benefit from it because I am benefiting from the light that is on. What happens if the guy turns the light off? That's called indirect benefit because he did not create the darkness. The light comes from the light bulb. He removed the nuisance of light when I want to go to sleep. That act, I'm not allowed to do. But once it's done, once it's already done, my benefit is indirect. Since there's no light, that's something that's permitted. Big difference. And it is there where we have this whole topic of don't tell him directly, tell him indirectly, hint to him. In indirect benefits, that's where the hinting comes in when it comes to Amir al-Akum.
You tell directly for a communal to help a community. We've done that, I'm sure.
Very good, Kevin. That's the hetatim. So if there's a tzorech mitzvah, if there's a tzorech community, if there's a tzorech chayli, very good. Okay, but here none of this applies. So says the Braisa that mamash top of chav beis ein medaiden. One may not pen animals when the kavana is to fertilize, not on Shabbos, levi Shabbosis, not on Yom Tov, levi Yom Tovim, and not even on Chol HaMoed. And now comes let's see how far this gets. Afilu b'toivam, even if a Jew is going to do it as a toiva, that means even though he's not getting paid, it's not about paying him to work for you, it's about Amir al-Akum. So I can't tell a guy, do this for me for free, because something that I am not allowed to do, I am not allowed to fertilize my field by putting animals in a enclosed area that's fertilized isur derabanan, tulda of either plowing or sowing. So I can't have a guy do it for me. Now there's so many different girsa'os. We're going to go with the following. If they came without them being asked, this is important. In other words, not the owner had knowledge that they're coming. Furthermore, there's no expectation of payment because paying a guy to work for me for Shabbos is another whole topic. It's another whole topic. And generally, just to say the words of Havla'ah, we have a cleaning lady that works in our home. We have here in the shul a whole team that works on Shabbos, yeah. But just to make it clear, we do not pay them only for Shabbos. They work for us also during the week. That's called Havla'ah. And I pay them per hour. And that's something that I could do. I'm not talking about them doing something that is an isur. Cleaning the floor is not an isur. With all of the other details, if they choose to clean the floor in a way that's easier for them, if it doesn't make noise, that will also be permitted. But as long as they're working for me a work that I'm allowed to do. And I am not only paying them for Shabbos. That's called Havlah. Goes both ways. I want to tell you a good word, even by a Bal Koida, for example. Many shuls pay a Bal Koida. But that's also a problem because they're working on Shabbos. That's called Schar Shabbos. Even receiving the money by a Bal Koida, they say, is because he needed to prepare during the week. So the reason why you're paying the guy $150, whatever you're paying him, it's for the work, but for the prep. And even if he doesn't need to prepare, but he prepared. When did he prepare? He didn't only prepare on Shabbos, for work that he did during the week. So let's go back over here. So now, if the goyim came on their own, so first of all, again, the vart is no knowledge. There won't be payment. Do I have to kick them out? No, I don't. Here, I don't have to tell them to go. Elama, ein messianoism, I cannot assist them. That's important. Okay. Now, 1 second. Likewise, when a yid cannot put a guard that will keep the sheep in the pen, so a guy put sheep in there. He did me a favor. He doesn't expect payment. I don't have to tell him to stop. What about, can I now I'm going to say, Vlad, okay, now that it's in here, I'm going to make sure the sheep don't leave. That's called helping him. If the guy did it, the sheep goes in. When the guy leaves, the sheep go out.
Or about Marat Ein, the person passing by doesn't know you paid him or not.
No Marasaynish. It's Isu Daraban. V'loy l'nayed esatzoin. And finally, that you cannot, I'm going to learn this last line the way the Pnei Moshe learns it. 8 lines from the top. He makes it into one thing. That's the right version. It's like a new thing. If I have sheep, forget about in an enclosure or they're not in an enclosure. As we learned just yesterday, that one of the ways you get the animals to defecate more is by moving them around. Don't forget. This whole thing is only Yisur D'Rabbanan. One would think I can move them around with the kavana. They're going to walk around in order for them to give out more manure. I'm not allowed to do that. I cannot hire a shomer who's going to be moving them around in order for that. I can't do that. Now, there will be a case that actually one will be allowed to assist a guy who is helping the field getting manured, getting fertilized through this pen. The taich here is, it's amazing the words. If they don't only work for me on Shabbos and Yom Tov, they work for me, like he says, for the week. They work for me for the month. All right, that's called having people doing general work for me, not only on Shabbos. Now, you got to know it's, let's say the guy is hired to come twice a week, whenever he wants, to put the sheep inside the pen. It's like our gardeners, very good example. I don't hire him to come on Shabbos or on Yom Tov. My gardener happens to come on Thursday, but he doesn't always come on, if it rains, he comes on Friday. And if Yom Tov is on Thursday, he's allowed to do the work. Because I am not paying him I pay him once a month. I pay him once in a few months. Pay him $100 a month, but that's the standard over here. So if he's being paid to work more than for Shabbos and Yom Tov, it happens to be that he came on Shabbos and on Yom Tov, here, one second, I'm allowed to assist him. Because Misayin, that's the word. Let me just read the words in the Rashi Elio. Right column, 6 lines from the top. The Gemara Dilon, the Perek Misha Hafach, Tane, that God limits in the Bavli, that Tani Hoyes Chir Shabbos. If he was hired to work for a week or hired to work for Chodesh, that's different. Then Messiah Noisam, then you can actually help them. Because when they come, you can help them. Helping them means I can stand a guard. He's trying to get all the sheep in the pen. I can stand as a shomer, a yid, the owner, the yid. Yes. Because whenever there's no issue with Amir La'akum, there I can help him. Why? Hoyel ve'enas chir li Shabbos, since he's not getting paid only to work for Shabbos. Shari. And ba'arach peirush, I'm reading all on the Rashi Elio, that ve'im hoyo elu haroyim schurim legoyim acherim chodesh oshana vada lo yamdu bikan v'lo bo ela akroi ba'alma. So he brings from the Aruch that he doesn't allow that. It means the Aruch says that the only time that a Yid will be allowed to help him if it's something that it's a one-off. It's a one-off. But if the guy works for me, Vlad, and he comes for me twice a week, boom, this week he came Shabbos, but he comes twice a week, I can't help him. But I don't have to stop him. And it's not a problem of Amido La'akum. That's the Rashi Elio and the Aruch, 2 different nuances over here. Okay, Chavra, we keep...
Rabbi.
Yes.
Does intention come into play here at all? Like we mentioned before, like it's about the guy's intention.
Yes.
Like if
the intention is to manure, that's the whole vartus. The intention here is to fertilize. The guy is coming to fertilize. There are many, yeah. My guy is coming, Danny, to cut my grass. Cutting the grass is an Isur Doiraisa on Shabbos. And on Yom Tov. Everyone here, and LA is a city where many people have fake grass, but before they put all the fake everything, people have gardeners. You don't have to stop him. You have no problem. Mamish. Because I did not hire him to work for me on Shabbos. I'm paying the guy to come once a week. He's deciding not only does my gardener, they decide the day, they have the right. They do it. They miss one day and they make up another day. Okay. That's more or less the heter of the safe. Now, says the Gemara, what did we learn before? That if he comes on their own accord, not I hired him, I don't have to stop him. So we learned in a Braisa, Rab Shimon ben Gamliel Omer, this is vital in the case of Shabbos, that b'Shabbos midayin b'toiva, that if he comes on Shabbos, right? So not only don't I have to stop him, I can't pay him at all, post facto. He wasn't expecting. I can't compensate. It has to be a toiva. By Yom Tiv, I can already pay him, but I can't pay him with money. I can only pay him with mezainis. Consistently, the Jewish owner does not have to tell the guy, stop. That's clear. They didn't ask him. He's not expecting to get paid. He's not doing it for pay. On Shabbos, it has to remain a toiva. On Yom Tiv, interesting. If you want, you can show your gratitude by giving him, but you can't give him money. On Cholamayid, you can even pay him schar. All of this is because he came unasked for. Okay, now says the Gemara. Let's go that this is a new braisa, not related to the above. We're learning a new topic. We're learning the connection is that sheep, just as an example, when they walk around in one's field, they defecate, and that fertilizes the field. So we're learning like a detail. I'm giving you a bad example, but just as an example, when you rent a car right now, do you have to give it back with gas or without gas? I know they make up whatever the rules are. Sheep is not so simple. We just learned that when animals walk around, they defecate more. So let's say there is an owner that rents a sheep out, Vlad, for people who want to just have their sheep walk around in their field. Am I, the renter, allowed to walk them around so much that when I give them back to the owner, there's nothing in them? So that's the braisa over here. That I can't give back this car empty gas. Cute. Look inside the Maraf folder, 13 lines from the top. It's like in middle. That's why I hired them. You can't mamish shake them out means to walk them around, to run around with them. We're speaking specifically where you only rented these sheep lizman mu'at. And if you're going to walk them around the whole time, they're going to be completely emptied out. The owner didn't want them to be ran around with. Whatever naturally they'll relieve without any walking, that is what he agreed to rent out his sheep. No, the point is that the owner wants the sheep back. He doesn't want them with zero. I'm giving a good mashal of the gas. However, I'm not. We have to be farmers. But if I rent them out the sheep for a long time, I can walk around with them until the last day. It's just that when he gives them back, there has to be something in the sheep. Maulanado, what does it mean to shake them out? You don't physically shake out the sheep. It means it means you walk around from here to there. That activity, that making the sheep walk more than they normally would have walked, will extract the maximum amount of excrement from the sheep. However, Hada Amra, says the Gemara, when does the Baraisa prohibit? That's only if you rented it for a short amount of time, which is like for a day. So if I'm going to walk around with the sheep, even though the owner rented me the sheep in order for my field to get fertilized, he doesn't have in mind for me to return the sheep with nothing in them. But if I hire them for a lengthier amount of time, then up until the last day, I can do whatever I want. Because they're producing new manure every day in their body. Only is when it's going to be awesome. Thank you. I just said that. It's a bad example, but it's a good example. Okay. Very good. Says the Gemara. It's a bad example because here you're renting the manure. You're renting the sheep because you want the manure. By the car, you're not renting it for the gas. Anyways, right, we get it. Okay. So now that we spoke about how walking more than the usual will somehow cause the animal to empty out its bowels, now we're going to go from animal to a human being. Says Rab Chuna b'shem Rab Nachman bar Yaakov, hahon the ozel leilu tzurchei. Here, if someone is trying to attend to his needs, someone has to relieve oneself, but v'loy misanei, but it's not going. So now we have a solution. Yezal min aser la'aser, walk around from here to there, v'hu misanei, and he will defecate. In other words, walking stimulates a movement in the bowels. If I can say a Chassidish word, defecating is surmira, getting rid of the bed. Walking, halichas asay toiv. You're making. So even though in the pasuk it says surmira asay toiv, that's the Baal Shem Tov. He said no, the opposite. First, walk around. When you'll walk, when you'll be doing the mitzvahs, the not good will leave your body. Asay toiv will help you with the surmira. Guys, this is a good word. Even though the Gabbai is not smiling, but this is gavaldik. All right, if I can say so myself. He is. Okay, right. Now, says the Gemara, now that we're speaking about constipation, there's more other remedies. When it comes to the remedies in the Shas, we already spoke it out on the Bavli, that actually we dafka don't follow them because the simplest reason is because, as you'll see over here, they said certain things that it's not clear what they said. He's going to speak about a certain herb. We don't know if it's a herb. We don't know what we're not certain what they're saying. And if a person is going to think that they followed what the Chazal said and it doesn't work, what are they going to say? The way, unfortunately, many people are confused today. They just shared the science of their time. It's not true. It's Torah. They're not going to look at Chazal properly, and therefore we don't practice it. But we learn about it. So Rav Huna b'shei Marukvan, he says that chafrisa. Now, again, chafrisa, I want you to know, chafrisa is either a herb that Kevin won't even find on Google because they don't know what it is, or chafrisa means green, unripe grain. That is ikar tov lamaye. The root is good for loosening your bowels.
Fiber.
Don't give me a fiber. It's not that. It has to be something more than just fiber. Now, if someone can take all of the opinions of what chafrisa...
Oh, but green grain, maybe that is fiber. I don't know.
No, I'm not saying Kevin is wrong, but maybe chafrisa is an herb. In other words, we're not sure what they're saying.
Maybe it's an herb that's filled with a lot of fiber.
Maybe it is, but maybe it's a specific herb. Okay. Right. Okay. The last thing now, guys, here's the thing. When the Mishnah concluded at the end that you can remove from this 2 sa'ah, 4 sa'ah, 8 sa'ah, you can remove the maneuver to the rest of the field. There were many ways of learning that ending of the Mishnah. We only learned it with the Pnei Moshe, so we're going to follow with the Pnei Moshe. The Pnei Moshe says, whoever has an art scroll, the art scroll is not quoting him, but we're learning that. Let's just go until the end. That you are allowed to remove the maneuver from the enclosure to make the 3 piles in the field. And the chiddush is you might have thought that you're not allowed to remove it. Why would you think you're not allowed to remove it? Because mele removing it from your home, even from your chutzner, people don't want to have a zevel in their chutzner. So people understand you don't want to fertilize. You just want to clean out your house. Where are you going to store it? You have to store it somewhere. But here it's already in a field. One might have thought that if it's already in the field, you're not allowed to remove it. That's the way we learned the Mishnah. Kumash Malan, that you are allowed to. Now with that, you'll have to understand how to read these words. So we're going to read the Gemara and we're going to read the Pnei Moshe. He's just going to follow through according to the way he understands the Mishnah. Rab Chia bar Bo asked, when we're speaking about removing it from this penned area to the open field in the 3 piles of 10 mashpelos, are you allowed to do it even prior to when the fertilizing time is over. He wanted to know that. In other words, why would you think that it's even permissible? Like, why would it be permissible? If I care, the way we explain the Mishnah, it should be prohibited. Because why would you have to move it at all? So the Pnei Moshe, 4 lines before the bottom of the Amud, explains, because when you have this 2 sa'ah enclosure, and you have a lot of sheep in there, Vlad, and the Mishnah never said how many shepsalach you have, it's very possible that you have so much sheep in there that it gets filled with manure. And don't forget, you're not putting the sheep in our Mishnah in order to fertilize that area. Let's say you're putting them in there because you want to shear them. We learned that yesterday. I want to shear them. It's very difficult to work in an enclosed area that's filled with manure. So Adarabba, there's a svara to say that that's what the Pnei Moshe says, that we should be more lenient. And not only that, even though the Gemara doesn't answer the question, look inside the last line of the Pnei Moshe. He actually says, Lefika chumash malon, da'af min asar mutar, you are allowed, but ula oilam achar shepasku ev the avoida dafka. Now, I don't see where he got that, but he on the bottom, whether he's paskening, but he's saying chumash malon, that he understands that it's not mutar. You will never be allowed to move it to the open area unless you meet the rules that we learned in the previous Mishnah, which are basically 2 rules. Number 1, zman, after the time of the Ovdei Avodah, and number 2, the piles and the amounts in every pile. Even though you are removing it from a enclosure, even though you really have to get rid of it, you can't do that not to give off the Mara sign. Atkan, halacha gimel. And now we're moving on. Chavre daf chav beis amud beis. This is going to be again fascinating. We're going away from zibul. We're going now into removing stones from the field. If you are doing it to clear out the field to make it fit for sowing, that is asur to do on Shvi'is. If you are removing stones for other reasons, like you want the stones, then theoretically it's permitted. But again, marasayin. And the Mishnah is going to speak about 2 scenarios. Number 1 is that you have stones embedded in the ground. There's something called a stone quarry, right? That you push it. You have a building. You need stones. Removing stones from a quarry. When people see it's a quarry, they know you are removing it not to plant there. But if they don't know that it's a quarry, then they might think you're removing stones to have more field to plant in. And number 2 is removing a fence. Now, I want you to know, as a general rule, when people have tall, big fences, it's not worth the work of schlepping all of the stones if the only reason why you want the stones is to clear out the area. That's the premise of the Mishnah. So if the fence is small and flimsy and light, then there's a bigger marasayin issue. Because when you're removing the stones of the fence, even though you want the stones for your building across the street, but the observer doesn't know that. He thinks, you just want to have another couple of inches to plant. But if it's a starke wall, no one would do that. That's the premise of the Mishnah. So case number 1. Case number 1 is taking stones out of a quarry. And it's very simple. That lo yiftach adam machtzev kit chila l'toich sodeu. A person who has a mass of solid rock, right? That quarry. And people cut from that rock stones for building. These rocks are embedded in the ground. I just want to make something clear. Prior to you cutting out a rock, prior to you chiseling out of the rock, you know what you need to do? You have to expose the rock. Just how it works. So there was step number 1 is expose it. Step number 2 is remove it. So says our Mishnah, if you didn't do yet step number 1, if the rock is not yet exposed, we'll see now how much, you may not do that on Shvi'is. That's the meaning. You cannot open up a new quarry. You cannot open up a quarry that wasn't properly exposed, because the observer won't see you simply removing rocks for your building. He's going to see you removing earth around the rock. You're clearing out your field. Okay. Now what's that? You cannot begin to remove the stone and butte it in the ground. It doesn't mean that if there was zero exposed, you can't go from zero to exposure. No, it means there has to be a minimum amount of stones, which are quite a lot, that are already exposed. Because when you have that minimum already visible to the eye, anyone who looks, who sees, this is a stone quarry. And what's that minimum? Unless it already has 3 exposed rows. And here you have a picture. And every single row has to have Shem Shalosh, Al Shalosh, Al Reim Shalosh. In other words, I just want to say like this. Every stone, the stones that they would use for building was, guys, 1 amma by 1 amma with the height of 3 ammas. And so you have 9, you have to have 3 murbiyos. Each one, chevra, has 9. Each one has the potential for 9 stones that I mentioned. You got that? And if you see the picture, you'll see the picture. You see, each one of these large 3 could be used to give you 9 stones. The typical size was 1 length, 1 width, and 3 ammas height. You have to have 3 such rows. Each one gives 9. 9 times 3 is 27, which is sheyuran esrim v'sheva avonim. So if you have that amount of stone already exposed, now aleph, I can remove the stones from it, and better, I can continue to expose even more stones, because there is no marasayin. People see this is a stone quarry. If you don't have that amount already exposed pre-shvius, you can't do anything. That is rule number 1. Rule number 2, or the rule of a fence, that goded, if you have a stone fence, so you have 2 pratim of the stone fence. First of all, the size of the stones, size meaning the weight, and number 2, the height of the fence. If it has in it a minimum of 10 stones, and every stone has to be so heavy that a person cannot carry the stone on their own, you have to have 2 people to carry it. Let's say the stones have to have 80 pounds. I don't know how you're going to put this in pounds. It should be a weight that one person cannot do it. Why is that important, like we mentioned in the intro? Because if it's easy to dismantle a fence, an observer might think, I'm dismantling the fence because I want the earth underneath it. I want the land. The harder it is to take apart a fence, the less it makes sense. A person is dismantling this only for the area underneath it. It's not worth the effort. So what's the effort? Here again, at least 10 stones. Every stone is masa shnayim v'shnayim. Shnayim means you have to have 2 people. If you have that, then then you are allowed to remove. You're removing it for construction. Guys, construction on Shvius is mamash mutter. Don't forget, you're allowed to do avoid on Shvius. You can't work the land. You can build a building. We even learned yesterday, right, or 2 days ago, that you can dig a hole in the ground to build a building. If it's clear, if there's no marasayin over there. All right. No, it's a wall that has 10 stones, and every stone, these 10, there can be more stones. But in the fence, there are 10 stones, because they had big stones, they had little stones, they made everything fit. If you have in the fence at least 10 stones, and those 10 stones are so heavy that one person cannot carry them, that is an important structure. People do not dismantle an important structure only to cultivate the land underneath it. That's how you address the marasayin. If you have an unimportant structure, a flimsy wall, people dismantle a flimsy wall only because they want the ground underneath it. And in addition, not only 10 big stones that have to be carried by 2 people, shiur gader is always asarat tvachim, which means that even if you have a bunch of stones, Vlad, even if it's 10 stones that are so heavy that you have to have 2 people to schlep those 10 stones, if the fence itself is not 10 tvachim tall, it's also not considered an important structure.
Question: how does 10 tvachim align with the previous measurement of 3 ammas high?
Oh, before we were not talking about a man-made fence. We were speaking about stones that are embedded in the ground. And like we mentioned, the question is, can I clear the earth around those stones to remove more stones? And as long as you don't have a large amount of stone, kashir 27, exposed, the observer doesn't see that it's a stone quarry. They see a field. and they see me clearing earth, it looks to them like I'm preparing my land.
Okay, but
That's in the ground. That's not above the ground. The stones are in the ground. I have to expose the earth.
so their mama should bury.
They're buried. Stone quarries are under the ground. Sure. Unless they are already exposed. If they are already exposed, then you can take it. If you have the sheer 27 exposed above the ground, then you can do it. Exactly. Now,
Rabbi,
yes.
with everything we're learning right now, are we back to Marasayan? Like, so this is not intention because
Very good. The
you're
whole
just
thing is
saying this-
Marasayan. I said it. I'll say it again. The
Got
whole
it.
Mishnah Dalid, like Halacha Gimel. If the kavan is to clear the land, you're not allowed to do it. The owner's intention is he wants the stones.
Okay, so the stones are above the ground. So what's I'm asking the relationship between ten tefachim.
Okay, very good.
and 3 amos.
I want to answer because that's the Mishnah. If it's not 10 tefachim, then that fence has a law of a machzev. Then that fence has a law of a stone quarry. And now what? So the goymemoi, in other words, we learned before that if by a stone quarry, you have to have the quantity of rocks that you can get 27 of those 1 by 1 by 3. And now even when you can have that amount exposed, another detail that we never learned, even when you have that amount exposed, Vlad, of 27, 3 times 3 times 3, even then you cannot go all the way to the ground. You cannot go all the way to the ground. You have to leave 1 tefach of stone above the ground. That's the Mishnah now adding the goymemoi at pachus min haaretz tefach. Even though the Mishnah never mentioned that in the Reisha, when we spoke about the quarry, the Mishnah didn't mention that. We're going to learn about in the Gemara. The Mishnah just says you have to have that shear. If you don't have 27 stones exposed, you can't do anything. If you have it exposed, the Mishnah didn't say. It sounded like you can do whatever you want. Now we're saying oichet nish. Also not. Even when you remove it, you can't go all the way to the ground. Because when you go all the way to the ground, again, there's a marasayin. That you are also for that. If you leave stones on the ground, you're not preparing the ground. But all of the above, we were speaking about the restriction. It's, number one, your intent is not to clear stones. You are me'ikar adin allowed. The problem is only marasayin. So we're putting you on a lot of restrictions. So when do we have these restrictions? Whether it is from the quarry, you have to have the 27, and even there, even goymemoi at pachus min haaretz, or if you have a fence. No, you can't. You have a lot of restrictions. That's only if you are clearing the stones from your quarry. If you are removing stones from your wall, that's where you have a marasayin. An observer, they know I own this land. If it's not evident, people might think that I'm clearing my field to prepare it for planting. Mitoich shaloi. But if I have a neighbor, David, and I'm clearing stones from you, people will not suspect that I am clearing your field for you to plant. There's no marasayin on that. That's how it works. Because it's shvius. Because it's shvius. Because people don't sin for other people. Everyone knows you can't clear the land. You can only do it if you want the stones. I don't clear your land. I might clear my land and cover it up by claiming, I only want the stones. That, yeah. Let's go right. But again, when do we have the restrictions, both by the quarry and by the fence? You didn't begin removing any stones from the wall. You did not begin removing any stones from the quarry prior to Shvi'is. This makes sense. But if you already began the removal prior to Shvi'is, then even if it's less than 27 exposed, even if the wall is not 10 high, I can remove it till the ground. This is Gavaldik. Why? Not without leaving a tefach. Because when I begin doing activity prior to Shvi'is, don't forget, like we said, it's not oivrim v'shavim. There's no marasayin. People know me. If I began doing something, people know what I'm doing. People are a little bit. What are you doing? I'm building a back house. For that, I need this. I need stones. I'm going to take it from my wall. When you begin working, people begin interacting. What are you doing? If you began before Shvi'is, it's already known what you're doing it for. Gavaldik. And let's go weiter. I know we have 1 more minute. So the opening rule is, again, by the quarry, it has to be exposed at least enough rock, 3 blocks, every block to make 9. 9 times 3 is 27. Hey, Chavida, how do you get from 3 rows to 27? Talasa zimnan min talas teisha. And therefore, tisha zimnan min talas esen v'sheva. In other words, each one gives 9. Like we saw in the picture. Once you saw the picture, you already know it. And the picture that Kevin is putting back up on the Zoom. The top one. According to the Rash, according to the Rav, according to the Maraful, the total of 27 stones. Then the Mishnah said, another thing, that if you began already removing the stones from the quarry, I don't need to have all of that exposed. That's what we learned at the end of the Mishnah. So now, says the Gemara, we learned in the Braisa, that machsev shebeinu lebein chavedi. What happens if there is a quarry that is partially in my property, partially in my neighbor's property? Upasach boy chavedi beheter. Which means that my neighbor already began to remove stones before Shvius. So the din is, or he opened it, that mutter, that I am also permitted to open my half during Shvius. In other words, even though my portion was totally covered, if you, Vlad, opened up your portion before Shvius, so people will understand that mine is a hemshech to yours. It's one area, it's just the border is in between. But what happens if Vlad, my neighbor, opened up his area and he removed all the stones? Now there's nothing there. Now back it's usher to me, it's usher. Because people won't necessarily remember that was a stone quarry. They're going to take a look, they're going to see yours is empty. And if I want to open up to remove stones, I have to have the exposure of the minimum of those 27 stones, the 3 blocks of 9, for everyone to see that it's a quarry. To be continued.